Welcome back, guys, to episode 33 of the JPS podcast. And in today's episode, I have athlete, 3DMJ coach, content creator, author, one of the best and my favorite podcast hosts, super badass, my good friend, Andrea Valdez on the show. So welcome, Andrea.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the nice words. I appreciate it.
And last time Andrea and I spoke, we chatted very broadly about her coaching career and how it's evolved, and lightly touched on some of the female psychology related to physique. And in today's episode, we're going to cover similar topics, but I want to get a little bit more nitty-gritty and into the details, so to speak, of these two topics, as I think Andrew is somebody with both a lot of experience and a great understanding of these things, and will shed some extremely valuable insight into both what it takes to make it in the fitness industry, as well as, the psychology of physique. So, Andrea, first thing I want to talk about, you've written about a few concepts since we last spoke. There's a few articles that really stuck out to me, which were related to working for free and optimism bias, which I thought are both highly relevant to coaches. And obviously the first one, working for free, that's what you were writing about. But why has working for free, for those who haven't read the article, because I know you don't promote it a lot, why has working for free allowed you to make a living? And, what does it mean to be a fitness entrepreneur? Like, the financial versus the psychological reward, if you can start to, evolve on that discussion.
Yeah, okay. Well, like I was telling you before, it still blows my mind that you read my website. Because Jacob's talking about articles that aren't on the 3DMJ website. They're on my personal website, which is at least 3/4 like just for me, and I don't know why. So it's crazy that you do, and I appreciate it. But the working for free is something that I've always held dear, in that I remember growing up as a gymnast, and obviously I'm a child and don't have any money, but I worked hard every day for this thing, and the reward can only be intrinsic. Or I guess it could, no, this is before Instagram, so I couldn't post my videos of the cool shit I was doing. It had, I just, from an early age, could never put my finger on it, and still probably can't put my finger on what I get from things that I work really hard for.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's that sense of accomplishment, the fact that I can do things that not a lot of other people can do, the fact that
is that your optimism bias?
Yeah, maybe, right? It might be. But it's a little bit real in that most people can't do a backflip. That's a tangible.
Yeah, I can't.
That's a tangible. I know you're giving me shit, but still, I don't know. And you know what? That's a good point though. Is I do, when you talk about the optimism bias for your listeners, it's basically this thing that we all think we're better than we really are. And when I read about that and become aware of it, I'm terrified of thinking I'm better than I am. So the way I see it is I can either, at things that I know I don't have a leg up, I can be real humble about them and be like, you're a piece of shit, just talk it down, whatever, keep working at it. And the things that I really do think I'm better at, I'm always questioning, if I say I'm better at this and I'm supposed to be a fitness professional and supposed to be an athlete, am I doing the things that will make me worthy of those titles? Mm-hmm. And so, again, things that make you worthy of those titles are working for free. And I'm not saying that you should work and not get paid, but if money is the primary motivator, generally you won't get out of it what you could, I guess is what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, I completely understand. And I think, a lot of coaches, it's a real struggle. It's a trade-off because, we need to make a living. But at the same time, there's a lot of the things that come with coaching and being a fitness entrepreneur, for lack of a better term, that require us to, work outside of, what we're paid for. It's very hard to get paid to write articles or paid for video content and things like that. So I guess, the fiscal reward is the obvious, benefit accrued from being a coach. That's what most people say. Hey, I took X amount of clients this week, or, I made X amount of sales on this program. I must be good at my job. Whereas something you wrote in the article, which I thought, a lot of coaches should be paying attention to, is the psychological reward, that comes with, the development of your practice over time, your skill set, your knowledge,
Yeah.
acquiring experience, just being able to, communicate better, like all these things. So how did your understanding of this help you recognize, the areas in your coaching that provide you with the most amount of reward outside of finances?
Yeah, well, something you said there that always stuck out with me was skill set. Like skill set, you can get money from being the best at something, obviously, but how do you become the best at something? And it's not if I train someone for an hour, yes, I'm getting paid for this hour, but how do I know what the fuck I'm doing? And that's, there's so many, when you're working with humans, especially, there's so many like non-measurables. Like you said, it's not like I'm working in a factory where I'm putting nuts and bolts on a car, and at the end of an hour, you know exactly how many of these things I did. It's not like that. It's
very qualitative, yeah.
Yeah, there's a broadness to it and the breadth to it, and especially with coaching, I can tell you so many things I've learned that the title of the book I read has nothing to do with the word coach or training or exercise or whatever, but I get a lot from it, like the Optimizing Bias is a book, right, that I stumbled upon via another book by, I think, Bob Knight, which is a very winning basketball coach, which, yes, it's a sport, but has, like, most people who want to be a personal trainer aren't going to read, 3 levels sideways from training, and I think that that's a part of it is I can't say that me reading a basketball book makes me a better bodybuilding coach. I mean, in some ways it could be more obvious than that, but in the fact that it made me aware of where I could be lacking, or made me more aware of, like, okay, where are you as good as you think you are? And if not, why not? And where can you change? So I don't know. I think there's just a mistake in the amount of breadth of knowledge or breadth of information or perspective that could help you in not just the fitness industry, but any industry. I feel like people sometimes get stuck in reading only the things that are very obviously on a platter, like this applies to you. When it's like, I think a pretty good skill is what can you take from everything,
And yeah, let's discuss that idea then. What skills does a fitness entrepreneur need? If you were to rattle off your top 5 or 10 that you have personally seen value in, not only from, because you obviously work with a team as well, of coaches who are successful coaches, but they're also successful, I guess, businessmen as well, as a function of their coaching. So, what would be the things or the key, areas that coaches should be looking to, as part of their skills?
Yeah, as part of the business, well, like you said, fitness business, there is a business side. And most people think if I know everything about the body, I'll get paid. And it's like, that's not it at all. So, and then when you look at business, and you know this better than anybody because you have a brick and mortar, but like 3DMJ is an online business. We have to have, how do we make money? Through coaching. All right. So who wants to be coached? People have to know that we exist. Okay. So for people to know that we're an option for bodybuilding coaching, we have to be out there somehow. Luckily, we're online exclusively. So we have the whole world to pick from, but we have to use the internet to get to the world. And so it's like, okay, we have to have a website. Someone has to at least semi know how to write shit and semi know how to work, how to make a website. Then there's social media, how to, and email marketing.
And all this work, just to relate it back to the original topic is free. Like,
yes,
you all are doing this.
I do not get paid to write an email list. I don't get paid to run our team operation, not directly, right? And that's the shit of it, right? Is like, we talk about learning so broadly in order to be a good coach. And then there's like all these broad skills and things that are involved in operating this business so that the end goal is the dollar per hour transaction. You're right. Like there's, God, hosting a podcast. Oh, I can't even tell you, dude, how many,
I
you
know.
know, and we're behind because I was, like I was telling you, I was sick for 2 or 3 weeks and we didn't record. So now in February, I'm talking on Skype at least 10 hours a week,
Yeah.
and it's driving me bonkers and I don't get paid for it, indirectly. But at the same time, that's actually for 3DMJ has become our biggest media outlet. So while all the hours and hours I spend recording, because ours are about 2 hours long, or
Every
1 to 2
Thursday
hours.
night they come out, don't they?
Yes.
That's when I tune in.
Well, for you guys, it's at night. For us,
Thursday
it's in the
night,
morning.
Thursday night my time, I tune in.
Yes. And, and then I hang up, and then, because this is my one of my contributions to 3D. And then I have to write the intro, record the intro, what's going at the beginning and the end. Then this is something that we pay for, but don't get paid. I have to send it to Brandon, who edits it, makes the audio and the video, and I pay him to do that. And then he in turn sends it to Steve, who is our RD / podcast publisher, and he has to put it where it goes so it's on iTunes, and he does the show notes and he fixes the description. So I mean, collectively, right, every 2-hour episode takes 3 different people, probably 6 or 7 hours,
just for
and we pay them, and that's how we have a following, and that's how we get a lot of clients, because I know that 3D is kind of like on a larger scale, right? There's 5 of us, so therefore to support us, you would, in theory, I guess, say we need 5 times as many clients, which would be even more difficult on your own. But I guess that's another thing too that you have a staff, you have coaches underneath you. There's just then shit outside of business or part of business. Then there's the people skills, right? I have to be able to work well with Brandon and Steve. You have to be able to work well with your coaches and your support staff, and you bring brick and mortar. You have to learn you have cleaning staff, I'm sure. You have an accountant, so I just think it's a real big fallacy that you can have one skill and make it in anything, really. There's specialized and then there's like naive.
And, with all of this stuff that you're doing, unpaid until you obviously see that return later on, the delayed gratification for that client, starting with you guys or somebody going to the vault and purchasing, one of your, services or products there. How do you stay motivated to continue to, do these things? And, for those coaches who are, feeling the pressure financially, because it's very real. Like, I know this for a fact. The pressure of, I've got to sustain my clients and build my client base and work on these skill sets directly related to my coaching, but then I also need to do all of these things to get it out there. What's your advice to, staying motivated, finding balance between, being a good coach, but then being able to, handle the business side of things, knowing that they are not directly, seeing a return or initial return on that investment?
Yeah, I think that might be a little different for a lot of people, and I think it depends a lot on the amount of stress you can take, both in life and financial stress, right? Like, I was really poor for a really long time after I got my master's degree because I decided I wanted to make it online, and that's because I didn't have kids, I didn't have a house, I don't have people depending on me. And I know you did while you were coming up, so I'm sure that that's even more. But that was a big stressor. So that's the only reason I would say it's going to be different for everybody. And if you can't take a lot of stress, there's no reason you can't have a side job, whatever you already do. I think when I first decided the first year I was like, okay, I'm going to do this online YouTube thing. I was a cocktail waitress at a casino during my first prep, and I was working with Berto. It was, I've done things that weren't super fun, but that's just it, is like I had to support myself while developing these skills, right? And then I think just an acceptance that it's going to take a long time, because I know I interviewed you on my podcast, like you were a personal trainer at some other global gym on your own. I did that too. I coached gymnastics on my own, but it's everything requires sacrifice. So it's just that exchange of like, okay, how uncomfortable I'm willing to be while I pursue this thing. And if it's not worth pursuing that thing, then either you take the slow route and that's fine, right? Because you have to support yourself, or you decide like this is worth that much and I'm willing to do X or whatever. And as far as motivation, man,
You know, I guess the satisfaction that comes with, you know, all of the things that you want to pursue versus what you're, you know, doing over here, you know, to keep yourself sustained, so to speak, like, you know, is
I'd
it
almost
that internal reward?
Yeah, and I'd almost argue that if you lose motivation over and over, like maybe this isn't a good path.
Yeah.
Because I've never for once questioned it. I would do like it. We talked about this when you're talking about your season too, your competition season right now, how it's like, unless, this is the way I feel about bodybuilding, you shouldn't compete unless you can't not compete. Right. And I feel like that's the same with, cause you can technically, or maybe not technically, but like I could be a personal trainer who used someone else's facility and they did the marketing for me. And they, you know, like there's definitely, it's not either I work for the man or I work for myself. There's ways of gradually getting there. But if you're, I don't know, I'm not real good at talking about the motivation topic because for important things, don't ever feel like I lose motivation. And if something's really not that important, I don't even think about why am I not motivated for this. I just think like, oh, I guess I shouldn't do that because I don't have this burning push to do it.
And I guess
so maybe you just shouldn't. Yeah.
This is a good time to bring up, you know, and what I was alluding to or trying to see, you know, how you find success or satisfaction in the job is not necessarily related to the financial stuff. It's the, you know, the self-development over time and all the little things that you love about it, I guess, that keep you going. And the Stephen, what's his surname? Pressfield,
yeah.
You know, the Marine example that he gave on the two Marines and the salaries, and I found that really eye-opening. I think, you know, that's probably something a lot of trainers, you know, could relate to. Do you want to share that analogy and I guess how that helped you, you know?
Okay. Well, if I remember correctly, because again, I think I wrote that a long time ago, and once I get it out of me, it's just out of me, which is probably not that great. But it's something about the psychological salary. And is that accurate?
Yeah.
Because I think you've read it more. So yeah, it's like, yeah, I might get paid some, but more importantly, what I'm getting out of this is it's making me a better person. It's teaching me skills I can carry forward. It's adding to my collective value as human, whatever. And if I'm trying to think, I think did I talk about 3D in there? Like how I did that for...
Yes.
Okay. So that's how I became a 3DMJ coach. Actually, I was, or I want to say how I became a coach because that was never the intent. I was doing my own coaching, my own YouTube channel, my own ebooks, and I was struggling. You know, like we talked about, like I could live, but not super comfortably, and it was trucking along. And while I'm not making a lot of money, I had this opportunity to use the skills I did have building my own business to help 3DMJ with this little side project. And so I got to know them. Yeah. So I did I had written an ebook called Beyond the Build for figure athletes. And then it went over really well, and I decided to do one for male bodybuilders, but I am not a male bodybuilder. So I asked Jeff to help me with the posing portion of that. And that went really well. A couple months later, because he knew me and I was already a 3D athlete, the guys wanted to do a posing clinic and I lived around them. And so I got to not just be the girl helping the girls out there, the 3D girls, but also like I sold the tickets online and created a little web page for them because they had just never done all that stuff yet. And that project went away. And then I was like, okay, so what's my next project? And I approached Eric Helms I was like, look, I'm making these little ebooks and I get that they're useful and quick and whatever, but if I can think about the best thing I can do to help the world, which is literally how stupid and entitled I am. I'm like, what's the coolest thing I could do? Or like the thing that makes the most impact. And that was to take the muscle and strength nutrition pyramid at the time. It came out maybe a year prior on video. Eric did it on the 3DMJ YouTube channel. And I was like, if I was a coach, or like it's so valuable that it really should be in text-based form. Yeah, I'm like, I would love to have this chilling in my gym, and I could just flick through it for this chapter about this thing to look up these values instead of having to go through an hour-long playlist. And so for those who don't know, 2-3 years later, it's become a really massive success, and we have the pair of books now with Andy Morgan, and it's been awesome. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't do, I don't know, a good almost a year's worth of stuff, quote unquote, for free for 3DMJ. Because they were my heroes. It was kind of like a paid back. It was like a reverse thing. It was like I learned these things so I could survive, and then I was like, when I would
can
see
help you thrive.
Yeah, and I don't want to say like holes in their game, but I would learn shit, and I would know like, and I would think like, okay, I'm kind of nobody. I'm this little girl. I'm barely making it. Like, I have shit to say, but there's only one of me, and I don't have money to hire people, whatever. And then like 3D is just, again, because I follow them forever, just my heroes or whatever. And when I would see like Eric's thing, I'm like, man, that was fucking awesome, and it saved my life. But like, only so many people can find it here, and it's only in this one format. Like, we can blow this up, you know? Luckily he said yes, and luckily it all worked out, but none of that shit happens without, you know? And then later on down the road, it wasn't, and I don't know if I've talked about this on a show before, but I know on some podcast somewhere, it's like the intent was never become a 3DMJ coach, right? And it was never, I was terrified, to be honest, but it was more like, and it's not like the foreman of 3DMJ. I mean, how many people in this world are more educated than I am, more famous than I am, more all these things that seem like maybe a more obvious approach on the outside. But on the inside, I was the only person who had done this stuff for them. I knew them all intimately. They trusted me. You know, it was like all these intangibles that maybe the fitness industry didn't know, but you know, it's four men built this thing so many years ago, and they're not just gonna. It's not like any scientist can come in or any coach can come in. It was the reason that I was brought on the team was for the other skills that I'd done for free for however long.
I think it's so important for any aspiring coach or fitness professional to realize that there is just so much unpaid work that you need to do before you get your shot, you know, and, you know, it's like, we're going to talk about this later when we talk about, you know, psychology of physique. You know, it's got to be your Pooh Sammy, right? You've got to, you know, want to do all that stuff, but love it at the same time, and, you know, get that, be intrinsically motivated, you know, by the reward of, you know, the self-betterment and all the rest of it. And I think you're a great example of, you know, what most successful fitness professionals and coaches embody, which is that willingness to, you know, give up, you know, the short-term financial gain to, you know, pursue something better long-term, which is, you know, the improvement of what they have to offer to the world, you know. And I think that's where a lot of coaches can find value from, you know, your experience in the industry. And
I appreciate that. That's real nice. Thanks.
Man, just speaking the truth. And I guess that relates perfectly to like optimism bias, because there are a lot of coaches who would think that they're already doing these things. You know, yes, I'm already comfortable with working for free. I'm already a good coach. Like, I already have X amount of followers. You know, my sales are fine. Like, they already think they're good. And I know personally, like, I'm constantly, you know, convincing myself that, you know, I'll be better in the future as well, and that, you know, just all the things that come with, you know, thinking that we're better than we are. Like, I think, you know, like you said in your article, a lot of people do overshoot their abilities. So how do you personally not fall victim to this line of thinking?
Oh, I think I do. Less and less over the years as they go on. No. Well, like, okay, so if I think about it, when I'm not obviously immune to it, but I think a good thing to say is the fact that because I read widely, that comes up and reminds me not to be a jackass about it, right? And so that's another one of those, like, I spend time working on myself, and I don't think of it that way either. I'm just curious. I think that's more how I think about it, is like, if I can always stay curious, I'll always bump into shit that just little reminders, like, don't be an asshole, don't be an idiot, don't, you know. And I'm a more negative person in that. Like, I don't read things and go like, oh yeah, I want to be that. A lot of times it's like that article, I read stuff and I'm like, shit, I don't want to be that person. Like, I don't want to be that. Like, when I see stuff on Instagram and it's like cringeworthy, I'm like, don't be that person, you know? So I think it's, maybe a little bit of that, a little bit of the fact that I am always with a guy. Like, being part of 3DMJ has done a lot for me outside. It's outside of the financial, which we talked about, but more in that I'm so terrified of letting those men down, and not being as good as they think I am or should be. So that's something that really humbles me, as carrying that name, because I've looked up to them for so long and I don't ever want to let them down. Things that keep me, and the reason I say that I don't think I'm immune to it is actually, we're releasing today was 3DMJ Podcast's 80th episode. 80th, right? And we had to re-record it for the first time in 80 episodes. I listened to one that we recorded a couple weeks ago, and I didn't like how I sounded on it. And I had to ask the guys if we could can it. So I'm definitely not as good as I want to be at a lot of things, but I was coming from a place of anger instead, and being ranty, a little bit like I was in Melbourne. But for the whole podcast, I was, I get on my pedestal of like, this is what an athlete should be. And like, I think, and I get sometimes where I like, for the listeners, yes, I'm a bodybuilding coach, but I actually train like functional fitness type stuff, CrossFit-y type things. And I follow a lot of CrossFitters and wannabe CrossFitters in that community. And it's a very interesting place that I'm not as well curated as I am with bodybuilding. And so I see things and I'm like, you people are crazy, and I think the way that I recorded this particular episode was from a place of like, I don't know, kind of talking down on a whole population of the fitness industry, and I didn't like it. So yeah, I'm definitely not above, thinking my shit don't stink sometimes, but hopefully I can catch it more often than not. But I get, and I was gonna say, I get shit on the podcast all the time for being outspoken, and that's not easy. I know that you commented on one of our episodes where someone was giving me shit for not letting Eric talk or something, which is crazy because Eric knows how to talk and would shut me up if he needed to. But, I don't know. Yeah. And I talk too much, as you're all listening to right now. I get after myself for that a lot. I don't know. I don't think I'm above it is all I'm saying, but I work on it.
Do you think that having somebody to be accountable to in the 3DMJ coaching staff, is useful in almost, making a comparison against some objective standard, so to speak, and allowing you to see that, you are, not ranked, so to speak, because I know a lot of people have done that. Like, people, inherently rank things, like they want to, if they were talking about 3DMJ, like, there's always a ranking system going on for most people. I've seen it online and stuff, and I think it's silly because, like I've discussed with you, I think everyone brings something so different that it's like comparing apples and pears. But people do it, and I think having some form of like objective standard for somebody like yourself, like me, to say, hey, this is where I want to be in the future. This person is there. What do they embody? What things do I like and don't like about them? That's what I need to do more of, because I'm not there yet. Do you think that's something that has helped you? Has it, made you? Has it, killed your self-esteem? I think it could be taken a lot of different ways. Like, do you think that coming into a group of coaches and having, more, I guess, people to compare yourself to, it's, part of human nature to compare. Do you think that's been something that has, driven you to improve and, make sure that you're not, perceiving yourself to be as good as you think you are?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just with 3D and not just with bodybuilding coaching. It is human nature, and we always say like, don't worry about yourself, da da da. And I think I'm a more independent thinker than I am the person of the five of us that's usually looking outside of the fitness industry most often. So it's like a weird I compare myself to a lot of people, but they're not usually people in the fitness industry besides the guys. Yeah, so they're good for me in that, like, it's weird. I have this thing where, like, I learn enough to do, like, I don't think that I need to sit there and, like, study research all day, every day. I don't think that, because luckily I have Eric and the guys we have conversations.
We're all lucky we have Eric.
Yeah, we're all lucky, but he's our research and development, right? So we do reviews over research together. He writes mass. I'm in, once I've fully, in the 2 years it took to write the damn pyramids, or a year or whatever, like I know that stuff real well, but because, my coaching roster is not incredibly huge and I know how to look things up pretty quickly, I don't spend all day every day reading bodybuilding shit. I'm usually looking outward, like I said, there's a lot of other authors I look up to, a lot of other podcast listeners, podcast creators, a lot of other athletes, a lot of, but when it comes to actually bodybuilding, it's funny. I'm just worried about what these foremen think of me. And I almost actively try to ignore the rest of it, because I think me, as the, like, kind of operations person of 3D, and, like, I try to pace our direction the best I can. I like to look at what's working elsewhere so that we never become another fitness podcast, another coaching practice, another,
Definitely.
So yes, I'm always looking outward, and the guys help keep me accountable, but I'm not so much like, am I giving the right protein recommendation? It's more like, are they proud of me, and, like, am I being integrous to the mission that they set forth however many years ago, Yeah.
No, I really like that. I think, thinking outward is something I definitely have started to do more of the more I've spent in the industry. I remember early on, I was very hyper focused on understanding amino acids and all of the nuances of, like, muscle protein synthesis and length tension curves, like all these, like, nuanced things. And, like, at the end of the day, it's like, do you know how to teach someone how to retract their scapula and do a row properly, right? Like, I mean,
but there is a baseline. There's a baseline level of understanding. But yeah, it's like, once you've reached it, I'm like, how far do I need to go when I'm coaching a 40-year-old, mother of 3? Like, I don't need to explain to her, like, the Krebs cycle, or whatever.
Exactly. And I'm the same in that I now also spend very little time, researching further. I'm subscribed to Mass, Alan Aragon, like James Krieger's research review. And I'll quickly read through, like, a couple of articles, a week. I listen to your podcast. I've got the 3DMJ Vault, a couple of things on there. Like, it's like learning to be selective with where you spend your time allows you to work on all these other things. I think that's really important. A little bit off topic, but I think that's important to the whole self-development thing. Is being able to refine, your ability to learn. And that comes with, obviously, having less bias towards your ability.
I think that's a good thing. I guess something I try to work on is, like you said, learning how to learn, and, like, trusting. I trust myself in that if I don't know something, I am at a point, and I think in my fitness career or whatever, in my profession, that I know at least where to look for certain things, right? I know if I'm having nutritional issue, whatever, I can go here and call the RD. If I'm having trouble analyzing data, hey, Eric, if I'm having trouble dealing with athletes, or because the guys, each of them have been coaching, I don't know how many more years more than me. So, like, if it's just, is this person telling me the truth? What are the signs of this and that? What have you done when this client's hit roadblocks? Like, I can go to all the guys, but, and we have weekly meeting, or bi-week, every other week we meet too. And that's where I get a lot of my education. But yeah, it's like, knowing where to go to get the right answer or the right perspective is a good skill. And I trust myself in that, at least, where I know, where I stand and where my, like, quick resources are.
Yeah. I think it's, super important for, like, developing, like, self-esteem as a coach, like, self-efficacy, like, all of those things that, allow us to get better and obviously not overshoot, how could we actually think we are. We could talk about that all day. I love that.
I know. Sorry, keep directing me.
It's really good. I'm really enjoyed that. Now, the psychology of physique, and this is something I wanted to talk about because I do believe that it's not spoken about enough. I think there are people out there who, yes, they touch on it. Everyone talks about psychology, in very loose terms, very broad, well-being, we need a healthy relationship with body, we need a healthy relationship with food. And at 3DMJ Down Under, you literally went balls deep in this and said, hey, bodybuilders, coaches of bodybuilders, this is what it means to be healthy. This is what bodybuilding is. Does bodybuilding marry up with our, what true health is? And you basically, discuss, like I mentioned, my headphones falling over, the Poo Sammy and how, there is such a large discrepancy and, divide between what we do in bodybuilding versus, what we should be doing for health.
Yes.
So if you can start by, reframing the assumptions that people make in regards to mental health and I guess the misconceptions people have, as to what it means to be mentally healthy.
Oh man, again, because I suck and that was so long ago, I'm like trying to even think about like everything you said. I'm like, oh yeah, I did say that and I like forget. But feel free to elaborate because you probably know more than I do. I think I was talking about how I think I was just giving standard definitions from some pretty basic, like from the American Psychology Association, from the Centers for Disease Control, from the like all these governing bodies of different things. We're saying like of these different psychological journals being like, this is how we defined healthy body image. This is how we define good relationships with food. This is how we define. I don't know. It was like 4 or 5 things or something. There you go. And then very directly being like, and this is what we do as bodybuilders. And if you really look at it, it's the exact opposite of all these things. And therefore I've said this, and I think all my presentations I've done with 3D is like, and the big question is like, or not question, but the thing that we fail to tell our athletes before they start this is, how screwed up you're going to be. Right. And if you think, okay, so now you're about to get ready to compete for the first time. You think your physique is at a solid like 7 or 8. For you, we're going to try to get it to as close as a 10 as possible. And then from now on, you're like 8 or 9 is going to feel like a 5 or 6, and you're going to hate yourself for a long time unless we really, really work on this, right? So it's as a coach, I feel like I'm assisting this person into and out of mental health, right? Like if they're prepping, I'm trying to teach someone how to obsess about their body. I'm trying to teach someone how to have a hyper-focused life. I'm trying to teach someone to be over-analytical of themselves. I'm trying to teach someone that their social life might have to suffer, like all these things. And then when it's over with, I'm supposed to try to undo that all, right? And we talked about this before, you and I think elsewhere, like how a lot of coaches who do all that learning on the scientific literature who like to say often, well, I'm not your therapist. I'm just your fitness coach, and to think, you're right, you're not a therapist, but to think that you're not in charge of assisting someone through these mental shifts, I think
you're causing this psychological torment through what you're applying on a physiological sense. So, you're responsible directly for what's happening to this person, right?
Yeah, and it's a little again, I don't know if negligence or it's a little
duty of care.
You'd be kind of remiss if you didn't see how those are linked, right? If I'm starving someone on purpose, to think that your mind and body aren't connected and aren't and again, especially in this world where everything we do is so public and it's I think I wrote about that on the 3D blog. It's how scared a lot of fitness professionals are of the whole psychological. But as you know, because you guys work with Gen Pop too, bodybuilders kind of jacked up, but a lot of it it's mental.
Like just different ends of the spectrum. Bodybuilders are here with the neuroticism, the over body dysmorphia, like all this kind of stuff is over here. The orthorexia nervosa, like all this stuff here, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have self-confidence issues. You have the binge eating, just all the other stuff. But it's not to say that they're mutually exclusive, because
Yeah.
often, they both lead to one another in many cases, especially in the
Yeah, and
context of
oftentimes
bodybuilding.
we try to make them more like the other to
Mm.
reach their particular goals, or they need to behave more like the other or whatever. So, yeah, you'll never know enough though then too, right? Because you have to know the person. What can they take? What are their hangups? On I think when you were on my podcast, we talk about like, is this actually for you? Is it because you don't feel sexy? Is it because your marriage is bad? Is it because you used to be a fat kid? Is it because, like there's so many things that there's in another spectrum, right? There's always like the person that's like, I'm not a therapist. Why are you talking to me? And then of course there's a point where we need to maybe know of a couple behavioral therapists or mental health counselors or whatever, when it does get to that point. But just like we'll tell people freely what to eat or how much to eat and all this stuff, but there will be a point where it's like, okay, I think this person might have an eating disorder and you take them somewhere, right? And I think for us to be so quick to make people judge, take pictures from me every week, let's flex, let's check yourself out. We can cause a lot of problems, and sure, they might not all go to full blown mental health disorders or whatever, but we have to create a very unbalanced human to get what we want. And I don't know, it's tricky. And I'm not saying like I have answers or whatever. I just know that it's complicated, and to simplify or ignore generally leads to less healthy coach-client relationships and less successful everything in any of their efforts.
I think the industry has come a long way, but that
Yeah.
might be just a function of me subjecting myself to the people who are on a similar wavelength to me, and creating my own little bubble. But then I'm often reminded that some people just have no idea about what actually happens to them in a contest prep. I had a new client, come to me just the other week, and she'd seen 3 or 4 coaches before me. She's like, "Oh, you're my last one," and she's like, "So how many weeks do I need? What's my diet going to look like?" And I just sat her down and said, "Look, I'm not going to talk to you about time frames. I want to know, what do you do at home? What's you've got 2 kids, right? You have a husband. You have trained in the past. Have you had an unhealthy relationship with food?" And I said, "Look, we're going to spend 6 months, fixing all this shit, setting this up before we start a contest prep." And I'm like, "Did these other coaches tell you that you could start, your prep now?" They're like, "Yeah, they said 16 weeks."
Oh my God.
And when that happens, I'm just like, "Oh my God." Fortunately, she chose me out of these other 4 peanuts, but
peanuts.
But it still happens, and I think that's just because people don't understand, the true definition of what bodybuilding entails. And you presented and gave your definition on this. I'm going to challenge you now, because you're going to have to think back and remember exactly what it was. But if you can outline to the listeners, what that definition was, because I thought, once we see that, we can start to better understand the sport.
Do you have it pulled up by any chance?
No,
because I don't know if I remember. Okay, let me think. Definition of bodybuilding or definition of coaching. Was it something about how I think my job is to come in and out of mental health, and that we are literally becoming mentally unhealthy on purpose for a certain amount of time, and then we together, me and the client, have to pull ourselves out of it. And I think that is my job. I'm thinking it was something along those lines.
I've got it, yeah. One's ability to drift in and out of mental healthiness in attempts to maximize their physique in terms of their divisions criteria on a single day.
All right. That sounds good. Yeah.
I liked it.
I approve still.
I really liked it. I thought it was very valuable, because we do have to shift in and out of mental health. And, like you mentioned, many people see this as a means to an end. They want to do a contest prep diet, which is just a short time frame. They don't consider, before and the after, what's going to happen to them as a result of this, semi-starvation and all the things that they have to choose to give up. So I guess, why is bodybuilding more than just a contest prep, and how can athletes and coaches better understand this so that they don't fall victim to, getting screwed up by, going too deep without, knowing how to swim, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I think as an athlete, as a coach, right, it kind of blows my mind how there are still some people out there who consider themselves bodybuilding coaches who have never done a bodybuilding contest prep. So I think first off, you need to know what the fuck that feels like, and to take whatever type of notes you need to remember the dark times, because I don't think you've gotten lean enough if you didn't have any dark times. You know what I mean? Like, note it all, be aware of it all, come out of it a couple times. So, and note all that. And then therefore it is your job with new athletes to explain and very clearly lay out that this is, it doesn't end at this stage. You know, have your priorities of, I would hope we're at a place now where it's like, I'm thinking business-wise, you would like this person to be a client for a long time, right? You would like there to be a multi-year career for this person, right? And so, like, their priority thing is like, is this person going to have longevity in the sport? And what does that even mean? And I hope that we all understand that if that means coming in and out of seasons, not just you get to the stage and it's all over with and you're on your own, but I need to explain to my clients that, you know, like when 3D sets up a client on our contract, it's like, this is what we're doing. We're going to the stage, and then afterwards we have a minimum amount of time, or as long as you need, to we're both comfortable with you getting off the weekly roster through the recovery diet phase. So it's I think any good evidence-based online coaching, or not even online, just coaching someone to the stage, I think everyone knows now that it doesn't stop on that day. That there is an exit period, an exit strategy. We make sure to communicate at the beginning, but then the few weeks leading up to the end of season, we all at 3D, we hammer it in. This is about to end. Before it ends, these are the things we're practicing on. Go rewatch the recovery diet video. This is our general idea. We're still doing weekly check-ins. You aren't done when it's over, you know. And yes, they're done dieting, but explaining to someone that we do have a plan outside of it, and that plan does entail gaining fat on purpose for a certain amount of time, you know. So just expectation management is a huge deal. And again, I think there's we talked about on one of our 3 podcasts, there's this like 2 or 3 prep, or maybe your first 3 to 5 years of competing, that it literally takes someone that long to be like, oh, that's what this is like, you know, to come in and out of dieting phases. Because it's funny that first 1 or 2 times that you prep, or that you go on an extended or extreme dieting phase, to the amount of time it takes you to find yourself again, I think is often underestimated. It's not necessarily an amount of pounds. It's not necessarily an amount of time.
I think it's maturity.
It can be a lot of things. Yeah, and maturity. And that doesn't mean age, but like, just maturing as an athlete. Have you experienced this? Have you gained weight multiple times without losing your shit, which takes years, you know, for most people.
Yeah, I think that's extremely valuable. And, you know, I obviously have just signed up with Team 3DMJ for this year's prep, which is really exciting. And
I'm really excited.
Yeah, you know, when I got the terms and conditions and read through all that stuff, like, you know, obviously Berto didn't necessarily explain this stuff to me explicitly, because, like, he knows that I know, and, like, we've got other things we've got to worry about. But I guess, yeah, like, it is one of those things that coaches should be doing with their clients, whether it's, you know, in documentation, whether it's part of the waiver or anything like that. It should be stipulated that, you know, it's not just a 16-week prep. It's also, you know, before the prep, you know, the pre-contest diet, the recovery diet. Like, there's so many things. And I've actually just restructured my coaching service with me personally now. I only take on people for 12 months. So
or more.
Or more, yeah. So they lock in for 12-month period, and I lock my roster, and that's it. Like, nobody else comes in. Cool. You're mine for 12 months. So that way I can actually coach you.
Very cool.
Not train you. And I'm really lucky that I had to actually cut my list down, you know, so I've got my 30 clients. And I think this is something bodybuilding coaches should be looking to do, you know, instead of the whole, let's just offer you a 16-week prep. Let's, you know, you do 1 session a week until your show. Like, it should be, you want to be a bodybuilder. Like, I think the changing the definition for the athletes has to start with the coaches, because they're being directed by the coaches. And I think if we offer a different, you know, service, you know, and like you guys do, it's not just a prep. It's a cool, you've got to do, you know, your off-season, your pre-contest diet, if you want to then be in a position to do the prep, and then you've got to work with this afterwards. I think, you know, us coaches, like you guys have done should be redefining our services to then pass down the message that, okay, this isn't just a diet. And that's something I've really taken from you guys, which is why I restructured everything like that. I learned everything.
That's cool, though. That 12-month thing. And like what we do is we have off-season Skypes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so people will come, we'll say often on our weekly roster, but 3DMJ has that separate service where we'll do off-season programming. So it's like, it might be usually somewhere between 6 and 16 weeks. Every that often you check in with your coach, they go over your program, go over your body weight, whatever. So there's and then let's say I talk to you every 3 months for however long. And then, okay, now you want to compete this season. Okay, we're going to go on the weekly roster through your prep phase, through your recovery diet. We're both feeling good about where you are mentally. Okay, see you in 6 weeks, and we'll start doing that again every once in a while. So yeah, we have a couple different methods too. And I think it was like Bryce. I don't think it matters, but Bryce Lewis, one of our elite powerlifters, has been coaching weekly with Eric for years and years.
I've been following multiple years since like circa 2009.
Yeah,
when he was skinny bodybuilder.
Yeah. I forget he was backstage with two of the guys. Can't remember who. Was it Eric and Bert?
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's the shit of it too. Is like to say it's so. If you know anything about the human body, right, it's a little bit crazy to promise results in any way. So if you're like, I can do this in 16 weeks, like, but can you? Like what, what makes you so sure you can? Yeah. Well, and what makes you so sure you can? If someone gets sick, if there's a death in the family, if it's not, like someone changes jobs. So I think, again, we're working with humans. Yes, there's math and yes, there's research, but it just doesn't always matter. It just doesn't. Preference matters. Lifestyle matters. I mean, there's just too much fucking context to even like go through. But if you only are basing your coaching practice off of numbers, then you're really not just doing your clients a disservice, but you're going to have quite a bit more failures than you will successes if you don't. One, recognize that shit happens, and two, take the long view. Like you said, why would you want to take on a client for only 16 weeks? Why would you want to do that? Like wouldn't you want one for a year or multiple years and to see their career through? Because it'll only get better and better. And that's not to say too, like there's people that maybe by your third or fourth prep, when you, like there's people like Berta, like Brandon's the same way. They've done this a few times. So when they finish their diet, they can just go. We don't need to see them through that weekly recovery diet, but that's not the norm. And that's later on in the career. And that's after you've known your coach a long time. And
I know
how
that
to
I'm going to need that phase the most. Like I know that, doing the cardio, like hitting my macros, like that's the easy part when you're in the prison cell that is the contest prep. Like you've got no choice. You mentally, you're in a position where it's like, I've just got to do as I'm told. You're a soldier and you're just ticking boxes because you build that over time. And obviously, habituation it happens and you survive. But it's as soon as you're out of the prison that you got to make decisions for yourself. It's like, fuck. I know that's when I'm going to need coaching the most. It's post show. It's not necessarily now 9 months out or 3 months time or. The peak week, like, we can do that. We can train, we can eat. That stuff matters, no shit. But if I want to compete again in a couple of years' time and be better, then I need to come out of it properly. And people just don't pay attention to that because they have that short-term view. And I do think that when you presented this, I know that your definition of bodybuilding really changed, how I perceived it as a sport. And I think many of the people who were there and the listeners today will now see that it isn't just prep diet. I think that's huge for the industry and the sport itself because there are so many people who perceive it on a acute timescale. Thanks, man.
Yeah. It's it most of the time causes more harm than good, right? In those first few years, it really does. And if you can pull out of it, it can be this lifelong thing. And I think one of the other articles I'd written and just out of observation, because I'm by no means an elite bodybuilder. But that's nice, thanks. But by being around a lot of elite bodybuilders is, at a certain point, the greats are great because they know how to gain fat. As weird as that fucking sounds, right? Everyone can look better and track it on Instagram and be real proud and get the shreds. But to people like Berto, he's like, how big can I get as soon as I can get there? Because I know that's where the magic happens. That's how I get better over time. And it's almost like a detachment. The more objective you can be with yourself, and this is my work of art and this is my sport and it's over here, and the things that make me a great human are over here, and they're not so closely related that I can't emotionally deal with when the physical being wavers, Yeah,
man, you have such a good perspective on all of this. And the final thing I want to talk to you about before we run out of time is the psychology toolbox. This was another thing that you presented on that I was like, man, Andrew just keeps making me think and keeps making me better as a coach. And I really like this concept because it makes taking this really fluffy topic, which is mindset. I hate the word mindset.
I know, but I use it, but I hate it.
Yeah, I use it and I hate it. It's like balance. I really hate the word balance, but I use
it. Me too.
And anyway, and you outlined, 4 factors that are pivotal to improving this toolbox, which are mental health, our lens, the devotion to the sport, cognitive dissonance, and behaviors. So they were the 4 things within our toolbox, and I really like that. So can you just share how you track psychology? I think this could be a future podcast episode for 3DMJ, by the way. Tell the guys.
Good idea.
But how do you track it, and how do you make psychology tangible?
Well, I think, and again, because I'm so glad that you have that pulled up because I don't freaking remember it all. But I do know that I'm more than likely 100% sure I talked a lot about journaling because that's always my go-to. Okay, so I'm a fan of it, obviously for myself or whatever, but I believe that record keeping or journaling or data collection, whatever you want to call it, that's the most comfortable way to call it that for you, is everybody knows it when it involves numbers, but when it involves subjective data, it gets thrown out the window a lot. And so however you need to do that, and however you need your athletes to do that works for you, I think it is really important. So not just what is my training and what is my whatever, but like, how did I feel today in the gym? How do I feel about my self-esteem? How do I, I know people have like a set number of 5 questions that they want answered every day from their clients. I need the video personally. That's my favorite form of journaling and coaching is, for those who don't know, as 3D coaches, we typically ask for videos, under 10-minute video from our clients so I can see their face, so I can hear their struggles while I'm watching them. And when you say the cognitive dissonance, that brings up the fact that, or not the fact, a very common thing is, I know I should be doing this, but I actually want this, or I know I should be doing this, but your behavior shows me otherwise. And that's something that I try to pay attention to a lot, or it's how I evaluate the athletes a lot. In a subjective manner, is especially in that recovery diet phase. They're like, I know I need to be eating more. I know I'm supposed to be putting on weight, but I'm so fucking unhappy with myself. And I look in the mirror and it's upsetting, and there's a lot of other ways I can exhibit too, but that's a really common one post-season. And, I would be a shitty coach if I'm like, I know you hate your life, but the recovery diet says that this is the amount of fat you're supposed to gain and you should weigh this much, so deal with it. And those are those soft skills. Like you can't, I could be like, but these numbers say this, but at the same time, if I care about this athlete as a human first, and I know they're miserable, I can probably slow down their weight gain to make them not want to kill themselves. You know what I mean? Yeah. Exaggerating, but that's, I'm bouncing all over on that answer because I'm trying to cover all the 4 things, but I don't think that worked out. But it comes down to like, what are the records you're keeping, and are they giving you the information you need? And knowing that information is not just numbers. Yeah. It's not just an appearance. It's
subjective interviewing and knowing what's actually happening with that individual.
Yeah, and they have to be comfortable enough to tell you that shit too. And so that starts real early in the relationship. is, am I creating an open enough forum that when this person's internal shit is hitting the fan, they'll make me aware of it.
Yeah.
Help me
like
fish
that.
around for something better.
No. I think that pretty much covered everything. Like it isn't something that you can, explicitly state these are the things you have to do and you will be mentally healthy. Like, I think it's just the recognition and awareness of, the importance of subjective interviewing for coaches, and, making sure that, those 4 areas are being monitored. Like, there's a lot of ways to go about that. I think mental health is different for everyone. I think, devotion to the sport is different for everyone. Like we can use Berto as an example. Like he's a through and through, natty bodybuilder represent. Like you probably get it tattooed on his, calves or something like that, right? But whereas for me, it's like, I'm a bodybuilder, but it has varying importance. My devotion to the sport varies, depending on other things in my life, more so than what it would for someone like Berto. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we're different. And the same for cognitive dissonance. Like some people are different, in what they say they want to do versus what they're actually doing, and it has different levels of, I guess, impact on their life. Some people the dissonance is very minor, whereas others it's huge. And same with behaviours. Like it's what do you need to improve versus what I need to improve is so different. But I think, like you said, just being able to understand that there's a person that has to deal with these things as opposed to being able to give data, that's really important.
Yeah. I get freaked out too, because the thing that you say you need most help with, like the only reason I'm cool talking about this is because of where I am right now. But as a coach, I think I was scared to become a bodybuilding coach after I'd done Gen Pop and like people wanting to get fit and whatever. But to actually be a bodybuilding coach, my confidence wasn't very high because I didn't feel like I'd learned how to gain weight yet for a long time. And I'm still a little bit weary that when I do prep again, will I feel like a piece of shit coach again because I'm not happy with my body? I don't know. But I'm aware of it, that it could happen, and Berto, your coach, is my coach when I do prep. So he helps me through it. But I think people who want to be bodybuilding coaches, hopefully with this and other conversations on your podcast, because I'm sure it's great. And you have Ian on here a bunch, and I know he's very aware of all these things much in a much more specific way than I am. But it's like, are you willing to take responsibility for someone's, and it sounds weird, someone's mental health? Like you don't have to say that, but we're so quick to tell someone what to eat. Should we be okay telling them what they, not to say should think, but some things that you could think that might make this better? Some things that have helped me psychologically, some things that have helped my other athletes to deal with this. And I think you should have an array of strategies there too, not just higher carb, lower carb, but like, let's weigh in less often. Let's take pictures daily instead, like whatever it is, whatever you need. Do you have a skill set there too? And are you willing to study that a little bit instead of just, numerical data all the time?
Yeah, I agree, man. I 100% agree. My final question, Andrea. They say time heals all wounds. And okay. I know personally that I was very much burnt from bodybuilding for my first few experiences. And I came out of it. I was powerlifting. I don't want to coach bodybuilders anymore. I just want to, do Gen Pop. And I know that you've had similar feelings and trains of thought, personally. But are you getting back on stage soon? Where are you at now? Is it something that you have come to, I guess, has that, wound healed? And are you now, changing your perceptions and feelings towards the sport over time?
I won't. Okay, things I know. I will not get on stage soon. I think I answered this on a 3D podcast not too long ago because they asked us what our whatever goals are. As an athlete, I want to do the hardest thing I can possibly do for as long as I can until I can't. So right now, like I said, functional fitness.
That's hard.
But it's hard as shit. And it takes a lot of time. but I'm having the time of my fucking life. And I am loving every bit of it. And I don't know if that means compete in CrossFit. I don't know if that means compete in, I don't know if Grid League's even around anymore. We'll talk about that privately, you and I. But I don't know what that means. But I do know that I love doing all the things. And that's Olympic lifting, involves Olympic lifting, strength-based stuff, gymnastics, body weight, endurance, like all the things. I like all the things right now, and I can do all the things. And then maybe later on, when I can't do all the things, that goes to Olympic lifting. And when I can't put my shoulders in a snatch position, maybe that's powerlifting. And then of all the things, bodybuilding's always going to be there. I don't feel the rush. I don't know. And at the same time, it's like the one thing that's transformed my life in the biggest way. It's had some dark times to it, but I appreciate the shit out of everything. And it's what I do professionally now, but I think I get a rise, or I get jazzed, as you can tell, talking about all this shit that I feel like no one else talked about when I was getting into it. And why did I, you know what I mean? Like all this shit, I'm like, no one told me I would hate myself. Nobody told me I would be a hermit. Which maybe I just didn't know, or didn't know where to look. But it's, I think because I had such a hard time for so long, that I really thrive on helping people not have such a hard time in that particular sport. But I think competitively as an athlete, I'm definitely not dieting for a long time. I'm having too much fun playing right now.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, for being on the show. As always, it's a pleasure chatting to you and picking your brain about all the things that nobody wants to talk about. So thank you for coming on. And guys,
thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Make sure you check AV out. Check the guys at 3DMJ out also. Like I mentioned, for those of you in Australia, Thursday nights, their podcast comes out every week, and it's absolutely epic, hosted by Andrea. And she's always asking the right questions, which are very useful for coaches, athletes, and anyone interested in strength and nutrition. So guys, that's it for today, and we'll speak to you next time. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.